Picture this, the thunderous roar of enormous guns shaking the earth beneath your feet. During WWII, U.S. artillery pieces like these littered battlefields from North Africa to Europe to the Pacific. They weren't just loud, they were deadly and decisive. American field artillery formed the backbone of U.S. firepower. In fact, the famous 155mm Long Tom gun and its companion 8-inch howitzer formed the backbone of the U.S. Army's heavy field artillery during WWII. These 6 guns we're about to explore were true game changers. Each could hurl massive shells over many miles, smashing enemy fortifications and supporting infantry at the push of a button. Strap in as we dive into the history, specs, and battlefield stories of these iconic U.S. artillery beasts. Imagine a great gun towering on 8 wheels, its barrel almost 23 feet long. That's the M1 155mm Long Tom. Developed between World Wars I and II, this was America's premier long-range field gun. It fired a 100-pound, 45-kilogram shell, almost 14.7 miles, 23.7 kilometers. Crewed by 14 men, the Long Tom's hydro-pneumatic recoil system and Asbury breech let it launch rounds at high velocity, about 2,800 feet per second. It was built to replace the World War I French GPF gun and entered service just before WWII. Key specs: 155mm caliber, 6.97-meter barrel, fires a 100-pound shell, max range about 23 kilometers, 14.7 miles, weight about 13,880 kilograms traveling, 30,600 pounds, crew about 14. Battle stories: Long Toms saw action everywhere U.S. troops went. They were deployed at D-Day and Normandy, earning a reputation for high firepower at long distance and across Europe and North Africa. One famous use was during the Battle of the Bulge. Crews used Long Toms to shell German supply lines from far behind the front. The gun could also serve in coastal defense after the war. Why it dominated? Its range and power made it unparalleled. With ranges of just over 14 miles, the Long Tom could hit targets far beyond what most field guns could reach. Crews called it Long Tom for a reason. Its barrel and range were extraordinarily long. It fired a heavy projectile accurately, giving U.S. forces the ability to soften enemy strongpoints and engage in counter-battery fire. In short, when Allied commanders needed to hit something really far away, they called on the Long Tom. It was reliable, mobile for its size, towed by huge trucks or tractors, and quickly earned a reputation for accuracy and punch. By contrast, the 155mm howitzer M114, originally designated Howitzer M1, was a shorter range but still potent artillery piece. Standardized in 1941, it was a heavy howitzer used in every theater of WWII. U.S. infantry divisions typically had a battery of these in their core artillery for indirect fire support. Key specs: 155mm caliber, 3.79-meter barrel, L24.5. Max range about 14,600 meters, 16,000 yards. Weight about 5,600 kilograms, combat, crew 11. Rate of fire was about 4 rounds per minute, burst, sustained 40 rounds per hour. Battle stories: The M114 saw action from Sicily to Iwo Jima. It arrived in North Africa in 1942 and was used heavily in Italy and France. During the Italian campaign, for example, American artillery hit German bunkers and gun positions with 155mm shells, devastating defenses. In Normandy and beyond, the M114 batteries would bombard enemy trenches, machine gun nests, and fortifications to pave the way for infantry. After WWII, it even served in Korea and Vietnam, so effective was its design. Why it dominated? The M114 combined firepower and mobility. It lobbed a 45-kilogram, 100-pound high-explosive shell well over 9 miles, 14.6 kilometers. Though heavy, requiring a 2.5-ton truck or tractor to tow it, it was much lighter than the 8-inch pieces and thus more common. It filled the critical medium artillery role, killing concentrations of infantry or creating large impact areas. Its shell had a huge blast and concussion compared to a smaller gun, making it deadly against dug-in enemies. Allied soldiers knew that once the 155s started shooting, it was serious. Infantry assaults were almost always preceded by 155mm barrages.
Next up is the 8-inch howitzer M1, the largest standard howitzer of the war. Known post-war as the M115, it fired a 203mm, 8-inch projectile. This big gun was mounted on a split trail carriage towed by M4 tractors. Key specs: 203mm caliber, 5.1-meter barrel, L/25, fired a 200-pound, 90.7 kilogram shell. Range up to 16,800 meters effective, or 18,373 yards, and 22,860 meters max, over 14 miles. Weight, 14,515 kilograms, or 31,780 pounds. Crew, approximately 14. Rate, 3 rounds per 2 minutes, initial. 1 every 2 minutes, sustained. Battle stories. The 8-inch howitzer battalions, later called M115, were heavy artillery units. During World War II, 59 battalions of 8-inch howitzers were organized. 39 of those fought in Northwest Europe or Italy, and 3 were sent to the Pacific. They smashed medieval castle-like bunkers on the Siegfried Line and cratered roads to block German counterattacks. In Italy's mountainous terrain, their big shells blasted through mountain passes. One nickname was the Faithful Dog, because unlike some lighter guns, the 8-inch pieces never failed under prolonged firing, though they had to pause to cool every few shells. Their psychological impact was huge. A thunderous boom and massive explosion demanded attention. After World War II, this gun remained useful and was even employed in Korea and by NATO allies into the Cold War. Why it dominated. The sheer heft of its shells gave the 8-inch howitzer immense destructive power. Its 200-pound high-explosive rounds could shatter concrete and scatter debris over a wide area. It could engage targets up to 14+ miles away, farther than the smaller 155s. U.S. commanders called these howitzers the backbone of heavy artillery, essential for pounding fortified positions. As a David Doyle military history source notes, the 8-inch howitzer M1 formed the backbone of the U.S. Army's heavy field artillery in World War II. In short, if the enemy was dug in or at long distance, the big 8-inch piece was the answer.
At the top of the size scale is the 240mm howitzer M1, nicknamed the Black Dragon. This was the largest field artillery piece used by the U.S. Army in World War II, aside from naval guns on railway mounts. Key specs: 240mm, barrel 8.38 meters long, L35, fired a 360-pound, 160-kilogram shell. Maximum range nearly 14.3 miles, or 23.1 kilometers. Weight roughly 29,300 kilograms, or 64,700 pounds in firing position. Crew 14. Rate 1 round per minute, max. Battle stories. The Black Dragon was built to smash the strongest German defenses. Only 315 were made by 1945. U.S. 7th Corps in Europe used them during the push through France and the Battle of the Bulge, often firing at fuel dumps or fortified towns with devastating effect. The 240's massive shells could demolish bunkers, fortifications, and bridges in a way smaller guns couldn't. For example, to reduce the Siegfried Line's concrete forts, commanders deployed these super-heavy howitzers. A contemporary report noted it was the most powerful weapon deployed by U.S. field artillery units in World War II, able to crack heavily reinforced targets. Despite its potency, it moved slowly, towed in sections by tractors, and fired only around a minute, but when one did fire, the earth shook. After the war, the design continued in U.S. and Allied service because nothing could replace its bunker-busting punch. Why it dominated? The 240mm was essentially the U.S. Army's siege gun. Its 360-pound projectiles packed enormous explosive and kinetic energy. One shell had the impact of several 155mm shells. The nickname Black Dragon hints at the fear it inspired. With a 23-kilometer firing range, it could hit targets behind enemy lines or out of sight. It was built specifically to deal with heavily reinforced targets like deep bunkers. In short, where other guns failed to penetrate, the 240mm hurled the Dragon's fire. Stepping down to more common artillery, the M101, formerly M2A1, 105mm howitzer was the standard light howitzer of the U.S. Army. Every U.S. infantry division in World War II had dozens of these. They were versatile, relatively light, and fired a smaller shell than the big guns, but in enormous numbers. Key specs: 105mm caliber, barrel 2.31 meters /L22, fires a 14 to 15 kilogram, 33-34 pound shell, max range 11.3 kilometers, 7 miles. Weight 2,260 kilograms, 4,980 pounds. Crew about 8. Rate of fire 4 rounds per minute. Battle stories. The M101's story is the story of U.S. field artillery. Introduced in 1941, it served in every battle from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, from Sicily to Bastogne. Troops often called it the world's greatest artillery piece for its reliability. For instance, on D-Day at Normandy, M101 batteries off the beaches shelled German gun positions. In the Battle of the Bulge, they fired illumination, star shells, and high explosive rounds to support American soldiers in freezing weather. The Priest self-propelled gun, an M101 on a half-track, became famous for moving with armored columns. By war's end, over 8,500 had been built. Even General Patton once joked, "Those 105s will beat the hell out of anything." Why it dominated? Its effectiveness came from sheer numbers and versatility. As one source notes, entering production in 1941, the M101 quickly gained a reputation for accuracy and a powerful punch. It was light enough to be towed by trucks, even mules and jeeps in the jungles of New Guinea. On rugged islands and in dense woods, the 105s could be disassembled and man-packed if needed. Its 105mm shell still packed a wallop, killing infantry, penetrating light armor with heat rounds, or creating smokescreens. U.S. artillery battalions usually had 3 batteries of 105mm howitzers per division to saturate areas with fire. In short, the M101 was the soldier's friend, mobile, dependable, and deadly in indirect fire. Finally, the 8-inch gun M1, not a howitzer but a long-range gun, rounds out the list. This was a high-velocity cannon using the same 203mm projectile as the 8-inch howitzer, but on a longer barrel. Think of it as a super long top in 8-inch caliber. Key specs: 203mm caliber, barrel 10.16 meters L/50, muzzle velocity 2,840 feet per second, 870 meters per second, effective range 20.1 kilometers, 12.5 miles, max 32.6 kilometers, 20.3 miles, weight 31,400 kilograms, 69,300 pounds in combat configuration, crew 14. Battle stories. Though produced in smaller numbers, just over 100 built, the 8-inch gun saw important use in late World War II. Its extreme range meant it could reach deep into enemy territory. For example, at the liberation of Brest in France, September 1944, U.S. heavy artillery, including 8-inch guns, bombarded German forts from miles away.
Its long range also allowed counter-battery fire against German big guns hurling back. The Brits borrowed a few too. British forces used them in northwest Europe alongside American units. However, the gun had issues. The high-velocity barrel wore out quickly, so it saw more limited use than planned. Why it dominated? The 8-inch gun's claim to fame was range. At over 32 kilometers, it had the longest range of any U.S. Army field artillery weapon in World War II. In practical terms, that meant U.S. gunners could hit targets others couldn't even see, firing well behind enemy lines or across mountains. When such standoff firepower was needed, the 8-inch gun delivered. It was also one of the first artillery pieces capable of launching tactical nuclear shells in the Cold War, though that's after our World War II focus. Even though it was troublesome, its ability to throw a shell over 32 kilometers made it a unique asset. In brief, if distance was the goal, this gun set the American record. From the vicious intensity of artillery barrages in Normandy to the island-hopping campaigns of the Pacific, U.S. artillery helped shape World War II. These 6 guns, from the speedy 105mm howitzer to the monstrous 240mm Black Dragon, gave American forces firepower to overcome defenses and support troops. Each weapon had its niche: the Long Tom and 8-inch gun for extreme range, the 8-inch howitzer and 240mm for crushing power against bunkers, and the 155mm and 105mm howitzers for reliable general bombardment. Together, they dominated battlefields, one thunderous shot at a time.